Good morning, everyone. Today I have planned to discuss about the assessment criteria, internal assessment criteria for 2025. And in this section, I will discuss about what will an investigation will look like. So because there is a change in the criteria. So we'll see what all changes has been done by the IB. What is the assessment criteria? In brief manner, we'll discuss about it and what is the role of the teacher and how we can complete our internal assessment in 10 hours. That is approximate time given by the IB. So let's begin. So the change to the internal assessment are more of an evolution than a revolution. You will find that there are several improvements has been done in the new IA assessment criteria, and it is so the criteria is very familiar to the teachers who are teaching from last 7 to 8 or 9, 10 years, because now teachers are in the flow of that particular criteria. So IB has not introduced any other new criteria rather than it, they have removed some of the criteria and they have adjusted the marks in the later criteria. So individual investigation in the future will see student collecting data, analyzing the data, right? So this time IB has given more emphasis on statistical test and describing the data or collecting the data, process data, and drawing a conclusion, doing t-tests, doing some statistical test to give an conclusion, which is around 50% of the marks. So it's a big change in the criteria because earlier it was not 50%, it was less than that. So this time they have made it 50%. What is intended as a creative, meaningful student investigation can still turn into teachers guided lab scaffold by TikTok checklists. Soon I will come up with a new video on how to do IA checklist, how to make a IA checklist. But there are some very useful improvement has been done in the IA criteria. We'll see in the next section. So the IB has slightly reduced the number of assessment criteria. So now this time it is 4. Earlier it was 5. And 24 marks was distributed in these 5 criteria. But this time there is only 4 criteria and all criteria have equal weightage. So it will see the reason why IB has made some of the criteria easy, because earlier there was we find, like, might be you have seen, like you have predicted 18 out of 24 for any student, and moderator has dropped down to 14 or 15 or 16. So IB has tried to minimize this gap. So made it more easier and better alignment of grades between the moderator and the teacher. So perhaps the most radical change in the introduction of an option for the student to work small group during the early stage. And then later on, they can use some of the data of it and they can present it their own. But they have to cite it that it is a group work, right? So the purpose, and one more thing is very important here, that IB has removed that personal engagement criteria, because generally in the personal engagement, students write like, my grandfather is a gardener, was a gardener, he was a farmer, so I got interest how biofertilizer or you can say chemical fertilizer affects the growth. So they used to come up with some irrelevant information and some ideas which was not relevant for the IB, and so that's why this time they have completely removed it, so that student can focus on the method and the scope of the experiment, how to get the results. Very straightforward. There is no chance of writing irrelevant information. What will an investigation look like? So this time they have removed that 12 pages of limit to the 3000 word limit. So that 3000 word limit may go beyond 12 pages. So it doesn't, when there is no problem in that. So this 3000 word limit will allow a student to include the whole page graph with table of the raw data, as well as the table of the process data, whatever space they take. Because earlier, the student used to take a picture of the process data and they put it, because they can't make a table. Because once they're making the table, page is going beyond 13 or 14. If they have, so few students have big raw data. So again, they take the picture of the raw data from the Excel sheet and they paste it. So to avoid all these things, IB has made it 3000 word limit. Even sometimes they put some pictures, which is very stamp size photograph, maybe of equipment or any pictures which is relevant to their introduction. So this time IB have removed it, that no need. Students have to choose an individual research question. However, the experimental method can be discussed and tried in a group of 3 or 4 students. Student can also provide logistical help to others if required. This type of help might be holded the end of the tape in the transact study. The collaboration must not go beyond practical logistical help, although a single experiment might provide a set of data, including 3 dependent variable and a couple of independent variable. So student can choose any one or two, a mix of any one or two with dependent and independent variable to show their own data. Right. So student can share this data and use the 2 variables which are relevant to the individual research question. Once the student has settled on their research question, the IE report must be entirely the work of this individual student. So it's not like you have done the group work. So it doesn't mean that you can copy independent variable of your colleague. So you must come up with your own idea. So any collaboration must be declared. Even you have done a collaborative work, that's good. You must mention in the method using a student code to show the reference that you have done a collaborative work in the lab. Either you can do in the practical lab, or you can do in a field course, you know, or you have analyzed the data taken from the database or from the secondary data or from the open-ended simulation. So from anywhere, wherever you are finding that you have done a collaborative work, you can mention it in the method. So IB has given a free hand. It's a kind of, so that student can learn how to do collaboration. Okay, so let's go to the next word count. So in this section, we'll talk about what is not included in the word count and how the front page will look like. So the IE criteria is nearly same for all group 4 sciences, which is 20% of the final assessment and 24 marks. The scientific investigation is an open-ended task in which the student gathers and analyzes data in order to answer their own formulated research question. So whatever RQ they have decided, they have to answer that RQ in the 3000 words by doing a simple experiment. The outcome of the scientific investigation will be assessed through the form of written report. Maximum is 3000 word limit. So what is not included? This is very important. Charts, diagrams are not included. Data tables, annotations of the data like table 1, table 2, like that, graph 1, graph 2, all these things are exempted. Equations, formulas, calculations, citations, reference, footnote, endnote, header, footer, number, and bibliography. Everything will be not included in the word count. Now there are some details should be stated in the start of the report. So the start of the page is like, suppose you are using A4 sheet. So in the middle, in a big font, you can mention the title of the investigation. Then on the bottom side, left side, you can mention student code and number of word count. And remember, there is no requirement to include a cover page or a content page. So in front page, you just mention all these and start your draft. Start writing your IE. All investigations will probably have a following section to be fulfilled. The IA assessment criteria. So first is your introduction. So in the introduction section, you can mention background information. Then you can mention the RQ research question, control variables, experiment method or design or secondary collections, whatever you have chosen, whether the primary experimental source or the secondary data collection, you can mention the method. And the last, discussion of the safety, environmental impact, and the social ethical issues. If it is there, then only. Next section will be analysis section. This will be chapter 2. This is chapter 1. This is chapter 2. In this section, you can mention data in table, including scientific conventions, consideration of uncertainties, graph and other data process, and you can do any statistical test to prove your hypothesis. So either you do t-test, ANOVA test, or chi-square test, whatever you found is fine, you can use it. Conclusion. In the conclusion section, you can do data interpretation. Then conclusion is justified by the data in the graph, graphical analysis, statistical analysis, then reference in the scientific context. So in the reference section, you can mention any research article which shows similar kind of result, what you have got, just in a support that what you have done is correct. In the evaluation section, we can discuss about any weakness or any step, or you can say the setup was the weakness, or anything which shows that this was the weakness and this has impacted your method. Then impact of these limitations, give realistic improvement, how to improve, and what else you will do if you're getting chance to redo this IA. So what else you will add? So you can also add your future plans, right? So this is how the layout will be. Now we will discuss about the assessment criteria, internal assessment criteria for SL and HL, which is a common. So there is IB has not changed assessment criteria for SL and HL. So criteria is again 4 criteria, equally weightage 25%. There is no change in the marks. Marks is 6 for all, right? So research design is 6 marks, 25% weightage. Then we have data analysis, 25% weightage. Conclusion, 6 marks, 25% weightage, and evaluation, 25% weightage, right? So now I will go through each and every criteria individually so that we can discuss some broader aspects of the criteria. So this is criteria 1, where we will discuss about the research design. So this criteria is going to assess the extent to which the student effectively communicates the method, the purpose, and the practice used to address the RQ. That means the research question is described with a specific and appropriate context. Means it contains a reference to dependent and independent variable, or any two correlated variables, includes a concise description of the system in which the research question is embedded, and include background theory of direct relevance. So we have to be very clear. Methodological consideration, again, there are so many things in the methodological consideration, like such as number 1. It's not mentioned here in the slide, I'm just telling you. So in the methodological consideration, first we will consider the section of the method for measuring the dependent and independent variable. Very important. Second, the selection of the database or the model and the sample of data. Number 3, the decision regarding the scope, quantity, and quality of measurement. Example, range, interval, frequency of the independent variable, repetition, precision of the measurement, all these things will be considered. 4. The identification of the control variable, choice of the method and why you want to control it, right? And the last is the recognition of any safety, ethical, or environmental issue that needed to be taken into account. So all these things will be considered in this section of research design to get 5 to 6 marking band, which is the maximum. Next, in the data analysis, this criteria is going to assess the extent to which the student's report provide evidence that the student has recorded, processed, and presented the data that are relevant to the research question. So here you have to maintain the communication very clear, like the communication of the recording and the process of the data is both clear and precise. So first you make a raw data table, then you make with all the trials, then you make process data. So in the process data, you can find mean, standard deviation, right? And it must be represented with uncertainty if there is associated with the variables. And then the processing of the data relevant to addressing the REQ. So in the data processing, you can show statistical test, you can show graphical analysis, right? So all these things will be considered here. For, for graphical analysis and for statistical test, I will make a separate video how to do t-test and how to do ANOVA test, maybe in the later month. So just be stick to the channel. I will let you know. Next criteria is conclusion. So conclusion is again a very important criteria because IB is giving 6 marks to this particular criteria, and it's very easy to get. So this criteria assess the extent to which the students successfully answer their research question with regard to their analysis and accepted scientific context. So data refer to quantitative data or a combination of both qualitative and qualitative data. You have to be very clear in both the sense. Clear communication means that the method of processing can be understood very easily. It should not be some mathematical calculation you have done in the background which is not shown in the sample calculation, and the examiner and the moderator is thinking how they got this value. So it should be very clearly mentioned. Precise communication refer to the following convention correctly, such as those related to the annotation of the graphs or the table, like use of units, SI unit, decimal places, and significant figure. Consideration of uncertainty is subject specific, and further guidance is given in the biology teacher support material. So there will be a support material where you can find it, right? You can also talk about inconsistencies in possible drawing a valid conclusion that addresses the research question, or inaccuracies or inconsistencies allow the possibility of drawing a conclusion that addresses the research question, but at the same time there is some limitation. So that also, but it must be mentioned in the detail. See, what I feel, even you are doing an experiment, you are getting a wrong data, and you are able to answer why you are getting a wrong data, IB is not going to penalize you. IB will give you the marks. So it's not about why I'm getting this, it's about why I'm getting this. So it must be a clear answer, like why you are getting this. Do you have an answer to this or not? If you have, it's fine. You can mention it. Evaluation, which is the last IE criteria. So this criteria assesses the extent to which the student report provides evidence of evaluation of the investigation methodology and has suggested improvement. So in this context, you can discuss about the generic is general to many methodologies and not specifically relevant to the methodology of the investigation being evaluated. So methodological reference to the overall approach to the investigation of the research question as well as procedural steps. So you must show the impact, right? What was the weakness? Which method was weakness, right? Was the lab setup was the weakness? Like some of the experiment we can't do in school lab. So was that point as a weakness? Right. So you must mention the limitation very clearly so that examiner will know, okay, if you have this setup, you can get more than this. So whatever you have done is is satisfactory. You must give the realistic improvement to the investigation that are relevant to the identified weakness or limitations, and it must be explained. So weakness could relate to issue regarding the control of variables or the precision of measurement or the variation in the data. Anything you can mention. Limitation could also refer to how the conclusion is limited in scope by the range of the data collected and the confines of the system or the applicability of the assumptions made. So you can uh, give a detailed improvement list. There's no problem in that. Now, the big thing, role of the teacher. Now we are here. What's our duty? Our duty is just to tell a student, do your IA. No. Our work start from day one. Now, when we say day one, what all important role, what are the important tasks we have to do as a teacher? So first of all, you have to discuss the criteria and the requirement of the IA. Helping student during planning means how to go ahead. So you can say, come with a topic, then tell them to search any research article based on their topic. Let's find dependent and independent variable, right? So in this way, they will come with the new idea. You can change some of it, some of the variables, and we'll see what will happen in the real experiment. Meanwhile, you have to mention that academic honesty is the main IB policy here. So some of the students find a research article definitely what they want. So sometimes they simply reproduce it. We don't want that. Student must do the IA experiment in front of you, or you can see the data collection stage of the student, at least one or two trial. Checking the student follow guidelines on safety during the lab work, obviously. If there is any safety issues, it will come on you. So you must tell them beforehand, like when you are using glasswares or you're using any heat. So you must aware of the safety measures. Or in the lab, you can, IB has given a safety measures skills, you can paste it in the lab. Guiding student to the standard techniques, use of apparatus, or the correct disposal of the solutions. Even like at the end of the experiment, how you will dispose the chemicals, how you will dispose the bacteria. So it must be as per the IB, what IB says how to dispose, right? Responding to student questions throughout the task. You have to give answers to each and every questions, whatever students are facing, so that they can complete their writing part. Once they will submit their first draft, you have to give the detailed, complete feedback according to the assessment criteria. You can give marks also, so that later on they can work on it. After that, to check the authenticity, you can use Turnitin software, where you can find plagiarism check with AI check. AI check means might be student has taken a help of AI to get some of the data or some of the conclusions. So using Turnitin, you can find AI plagiarism also. So I will make a separate video on how to use Turnitin to find AI plagiarism. Then after that, once you found that student have some chunks of paragraph which is plagiarized, so you can tell the student to work on it or rephrase it, or you can tell them to remove it. Then after that, mark the work, and submit the work for on IBS for moderation. This is your role as a teacher. What we all, so it's not an easy task. So again, why a role of teacher is very important, because it's going to be easy for some of the student maybe, but some will really going to face some difficulty. So ideally, a progression of formative practical work will be built into normal teaching hours. It should not be extra work. So 3 weeks of lesson should be enable student to work individually, collecting data and writing their experiment. Some schools may prefer to collapse the timetable of the couple of days or week and tell them to work during the weekend. Weekdays, and maybe they will go for field trip where they will write the investigation. So I will suggest avoid this. During the investigation period, the teacher becomes a resource for the student, and a good teacher must dance around the lab to complete the dizzy array of tasks found in the role of teachers in the section of IB guide. So in the IB biology guide, you will get a teacher's role. So I have mentioned some of the points here. Okay, so we'll stick to this. Outline plan of lessons for 10 hours of investigation in a class. So this is the planned activity, and this is the number of hours. So we can dedicate 12 hours, 10 to 12 hours to 1 hour in introduction of the task and the student choice of topic, optimal time for collaboration in the initial planning of the IA, then 3 to 4 hours teacher consultation time for each student. Student continue to write their whole essay, mentioning the RQ, scientific context, method, right? Then method collects for checking feasibility, reliability of the data, safety and ethics, lab experimentation time. They can invest 5 hours, not in one shot, in a bunch. Analysis data, conclusion writing, then student finalizing the conclusion, right? Then you can write the feedback on the first draft and then submit it for Turnitin check, and then final revision and submission for moderation. So this is how we can plan our 10 to 12 hours of investigation in a class with each and every student. So hope I found this session will be informative for many teachers. If you have any question, please don't hesitate to write to me, and I will get back to you with the video. Thank you, and see you again in the next video.